Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. My name is Reed. Along with me, as always, is Mike. Mike, it was a long-awaited day for you and me today. There have been rumors, really, for years about DC attempting their own version of the Ultimate Universe. Since the beginning of the year, really, there's been a lot of whispers that it would happen. Today, we got actual 100% verifiable confirmation from DC about a new initiative that they're starting.
From the head
DC
writers
All In.
themselves.
Yeah, from Josh Williamson and Scott Snyder. Would definitely encourage, if you guys want to see the stuff that we're reacting to for yourself, to go check out the video. It's on DC Comics, YouTube, and they posted it all around. But we just thought we'd talk a little bit about what we thought about the announcement as huge DC Comics guys. We love Marvel, but DC Comics is where both Mike and I really have our heart lays and allegiances lays to DC Comics. Um,
Yes.
they kind of made an announcement. Mike, I will start with you, sir. Just everything you heard today, what stood out to you? What are your thoughts about it after watching?
Well, I do like the mantra all in.
Hmm.
And you could tell that they were all in. I mean, Snyder said they've been thinking about this for years. So it's no wonder that the rumors have been circulating for that long.
Yeah.
Um, of course, being a DC fan, I'm all in too. I'm all in. And I can't wait for to see what happens. But of course, I'm a little bit nervous. Some of the things that we talked about, they're giving writers free reign to just explore new things in this universe. They turned Batman into a beast. They said at one point, and so I'm a little bit like biting my nails a little bit, but I'm excited. Of course, this is and they talked about it. This is kind of it's almost like they were listening to our videos. They needed a reboot. This is going to be something invigorating. Of course, they weren't listening to our videos, but
Yeah.
that our sentiment is out there in the fandom, right? We need something fresh. We need a jumping on point. They kept making that point again and again in the video, right? It's a
Yeah.
jumping on point. It's a jumping on point. What do we always say in our videos? Like these complicated storylines, we need a fresh jumping on point. Well, here it is potentially. A new Supergirl, a beastly Batman. They didn't mention the Flash at all. Sorry, Jay Garrick and Barry Allen, but I'm sure he'll be in there somewhere, right?
Yeah, I think, what stood out to me a couple things. So, obviously the announcement kind of is that they're going to, in October, all the mainline DC continuity will continue. They're gonna with those, they're going to kind of launch a lot of books. They said put new creative teams on books that are going, like Detective Comics and Action Comics and Batman and Robin. They will continue some of the series that have been working. So if you're reading, Batman or Green Lantern or Flash and you've been enjoying those, they're not going to interrupt all of those to start everything back at a new number one or anything like that. So jumping on points, not a full reboot, and then there's going to be the launch of the Absolute Universe, which, as they described, kind of Batman's rather bulky. He looks a little bit more like the Juggernaut than Batman, to be honest. You've got Superman, no cape, very gray costume, kind of shaggy, short, longer hair. Wonder Woman looks
It's
a
hard
little
to find the
more.
barber with the kryptonite scissors, and if they ever
But
break
they,
or get
based on that
lost.
design, I thought my biggest thing was I think on the design we need to find some kryptonite scissors for Superman. And Wonder Woman a little more of a barbarian warrior type look, based on what the three kind of teases were. I think the other thing I did like that they mentioned, they said Darkseid is really going to be the cause of all this. Darkseid will be returned as kind of the big bad. They put a lot of emphasis on him. And it kind of seems like this universe and DC will be separate, but it will be one kind of bigger story, to go.
Wait,
It's a lot of stuff at the same time.
didn't they say something about a brand new planet or something?
Yeah, essentially, it sounds like there's a brand new planet that will exist with this absolute universe.
So that's the safety door between like, oh, it was a complete, you know, mess. We can always go back through the
Yeah.
door.
I think the thing is
because that was that planet. That was Earth
the
47.
phrasing of all in is interesting to me. And then we go, we're all in, but we're keeping the old continuity and we're doing a new one at the same time. That doesn't seem to be as all in when you're like, well, we're gonna have two different versions of Batman that we're making.
Well,
I
but would
will
you say
say,
60-50 in 70-30?
yeah, I think it's yeah, this is not pushing all your chips to the middle of the table, which I think
What
if they'd have been like, hey, the absolute universe, that's our new starting point, everything's absolute universe now, that's more all in. What I'll say is I do appreciate the approach they're doing instead, to be honest. And
yeah.
that I one of the things I try to do on here is there's times we talk about stuff, but then I'll be hypocritical and I don't want to be hypocritical. If all of a sudden Batman was just canceled, the current book, and Detective Comics was canceled, and it was all this brand new brawler version of Batman, I'll be honest, I'm not going to be happy about that.
You would
Right?
be
Like, I
all
may
out.
not love the current Batman book as it is going, but I still like the Batman character, where he's at, that kind of stuff, where I'm like, I don't want to reboot because I think the danger it's interesting. We talked a few months back about how we thought DC did need a reboot, but I think the thing is where I don't want to, I want to reboot, but I want to reboot the characters kind of to where we know them, right? Sort of like they do on like a Batman the Animated Series, where it's like it's a reboot. Technically, we're getting rid of a lot of continuity, but it's Bruce Wayne. He's got the mansion, the parents' origins the same, Alfred, all the stuff that you kind of love Batman, right? If you boil them down, he's that. This absolute universe is more we're reinventing these characters, period. Like this is, and that's, I wouldn't want to see that. I don't want you to go all of a sudden Batman's, this huge juggernaut-esque figure with no money running around in a weird costume, and that's the only version of Batman now. And so I think I actually appreciate this approach, and that I think for those who do want something different, you're going to have it. For those who want to continue reading this stuff the way that it is, it's there too. I do think if the app, so what I will say, the caveat to all this is if the absolute universe is going crazily well and selling like crazy and it's selling out and doing well, then that should become the main universe. I think it's kind of smart to let us sit, see if these things take off. And if 1 or 2 years down the line, it's like, hey, absolute Superman, absolute Batman, absolute Wonder Woman are selling double what the older ones are, then I would go all to that and kind of let
Yeah.
those other ones go.
This is the challenge for both universes and both industries. And it's a constant challenge, right? It's a constant challenge because you have 80 years of character building and continuity, as messy as it has been in the last 30 years. You have that, and your base is totally committed to that. How are you going to totally break the mold, and how do you go about doing that? Nobody's figured it out really successfully yet, and there's a reason for that, but it's because we love our old characters the old way, the way they were developed. We just would like new stories for them, if you could please. But things have to change, they have to evolve. That's why I'm all in for DC's all in, and I think it was smart to keep some books in the old continuity. I mean, how are you going to cancel Action Comics? How are you going to cancel Batman or
Detective
Detective
Comics,
Comics?
or yeah.
You just can't do that. It's like that's been going since 1938 and 1939. You got to keep that train rolling. But by the same token, like we're in new generations, people consume media differently now. The whole manga thing, and they're kind of in competition but not in competition. So it's interesting, and Marvel's trying this Ultimate, which has been fairly successful. So I think DC was probably hedging their bets, maybe not quite ready, although they've been planning it for a few years, it seems. So here it finally is. October will be Halloween
Big
Comic
month.
Book Day, right? But
Yeah.
they say the first book is going to be the. I wonder if they're going to give it away on Halloween Comic Book Day.
Yeah, probably not. But I think that October there's supposed to be a one shot that explains
Yeah,
how both exist and all that. Um, It's interesting in that, like, I think the thing that's kind of crazy, and this is where sometimes when we talk about these characters and things like that, that I wonder if it's just impossible for modern comics to go where older fans like us wanted to go. And that if you told me, hey, Reed, do you think they should reboot DC's continuity? I'd say yes. But the idea of when they reboot would be that I'm getting the Neil Adams, Denny O'Neil version of Batman, that I'm getting the classic Superman of the Dan Jurgens kind of guy from the 90s and stuff like that, right? I'm going to get these classic great versions from the past, right? The modern creators, it's nothing that I think are they're bad or anything like that, and certainly there's a lot of good ones. I just don't know that I'm like, hey, I want modern creators to come in and completely redefine and break Batman as a character and start anew. Because what's funny is, when you look at after Crisis, right? They redefined some things after Crisis. But Superman, while it got rebooted and things like that, and there were some small changes, he largely resembled the character you'd always seen. It just cleaned up a little bit of the mess around Superman, right? DC's typically done that. What I don't want to see is another new 52, where it's like, yeah, no, we're just completely breaking all of the toys. Barry's not married anymore. Green Arrow's like 20 instead of 40. Like, I don't like that approach. And so I think this is as good an attempt as they can make in that if you are someone who's like, it's too hard for me to get into Batman, it's too hard for me to get into Superman, we are going to put what seems to be some decent creative talent on these new books that will be easily digestible. It seems like there's only 3 to start with Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. And if you want to start the DC universe and have that, boom, here's your 3 that you can read. Like you mentioned, the Ultimate Universe has done a pretty good job with that so far. And I think that's really smart. While at the same time, they're not saying, hey, if you're reading Batman, forget you. Here's the new Batman. We don't care anymore. And so I think it's
You
as
just
good an
can't. You
attempt as you're
can't
going to
do
get.
that. You can't
Yeah.
do that, and
And you
that
should.
is,
Yeah.
and that's the whole quagmire that they've been in for 15 years, 20 years, trying to figure out how to reinvent the wheel that was already, working pretty good, and but with Williams and Snyder and Wade
There
is going to
does
be
seem
on it. I mean, these guys are the giants. I mean, you
Yeah,
shouldn't
I mean,
go
I think
wrong.
you look at, Josh Williamson, his Flash book from Rebirth was one of the books that really seemed to do well, fare well with fans. Snyder's Batman was the standout of the New 52 for many folks. And so you do have some guys who at least have some good voices for DC's characters. I think the issue um, for DC will be and it's the biggest issue any company has. What creatives do you put on these books? I know they said Jason Aaron. I have conflicting feelings on Jason Aaron, and that I think Jason Aaron about a
Mora,
decade ago
Mora
was
was
one of,
mentioned.
yeah. Jason Aaron was good, but then he did the whole Jane Foster Thor thing, and then he ran the Punisher through the mud, and so like him getting his own Superman book where he can do whatever he wants. I'm like, we'll see how that goes. Again, I think he's talented. I've liked this Batman book that he's writing right now. But I think that's the biggest issue is I'd feel so much better if they said, hey, this is, we've got Williamson, we've got Snyder, we've got Jeff Johns, we've got Jason Fabok, we've got the Ghost Machine guys were still in play and they were
Yeah,
still with DC. Those would be the guy. I'd be like, okay, now you really have a team. My thing is, Josh Williamson and Scott Snyder, as much as I do like them quite a bit, um, they can't write all the books. Like they can't. And so it's gonna be a lot of who's writing what book. Like it's funny because your character, the Flash's comic book has fluctuated so much in the past 15 years, and that I found the new 52 Flash to be almost unreadable. I didn't really like it very much. I didn't like many of what they did with the stories at all. Rebirth happened. Williamson on got
that
on
was
it, did
Williamson's book, though.
amazing. Yeah,
Williamson made that book.
Jeremy Adams was on it. It was amazing. And now the newer run, I'm kind of closer back to the new 52, where I'm like, what are we doing here? And I think that's the thing is I do hope in this planning that they did, they also planned out the creative teams well and got folks who understand the characters. And I really hope that's what they have been spending time on is not just here's our grand plan. I hope that grand plan has included this guy writes this type of character well. We're going to put him on this book, or getting talent from the indie space or from wherever to get guys in. I think that's going to be the big issue is I can be as excited as you want to about a rebirth and an all in and all this stuff. And granted, yes, I'm going to pick up a lot of the number one issues and the jumping on points and all this stuff when it comes out. But if you want this to actually be meaningful, it's got to have the right folks assigned to the right book. It's got to have the right people there. And I just think, I
The
will be
scheduling,
so happy if this comes out and it's like what Titan did with Conan, right? Where they got a new
that's
number
what we
one.
want.
That if they could do something like, I just don't know that I trust the creatives to do that in the same way. But I'm hoping, again,
I,
I
I
I I,
think
I love both Scott Snyder and Williamson as writers. I've enjoyed a lot of their comic books, a lot more than I've disliked. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
I'm all in on it for sure. And can you imagine the stress that they've been under the last year? The hand wringing, the nerves. It's got to have been kind of tough for them. And then the scheduling nightmare of actually producing the material and getting it on time. Like they mentioned, that many pages are already ready, and Josh was saying how impressive it looked, and I'm sure it does. But you're right. I mean, I think what happens is the legs wear out after issue 3 and 4, and for whatever reason, a new writer, a new artist comes in and subs, and it can hurt a book. Sometimes it can help a book, sometimes it can hurt a book. But whoever sits in that chair has got to make that call, and it's got to be nerve wracking. Ideally, we'd love to have writer artist team like pull through.
Yeah.
But hey, if it's only going to be 3 books,
No,
you know,
that's the biggest thing is, on both sides of this. I hope they look at it because if you're going to have two separate continuities, I do hope they can at least give some consistency to it, right? Like, I think the thing that I want more than anything out of DC Comics is can you do what something like these smaller books do that, like, we've got one writer and maybe two artists to alternate, right? And this
yeah.
artist does 4 issues, the next does four, the next does four. That I don't need a writer. For some reason in modern age, because of page rates, whatever, it's impossible for modern comic book artists to write one book monthly every month. I don't know why, but it basically seems to be the standard in the industry right now is that there is no artist who can consistently do a monthly comic book all year long. Don't know why that's the case, but it is. And again, it's a really difficult thing. It's probably a lot harder than I imagined. It just seems like that used to happen a lot more in the past, but it doesn't anymore. That is okay. That is a reality that I've accepted as a comic book fan. What I do hope they can do, though, is when they have planned this out, and this is the main thing I hope out of all this is, if we're going to do this all in thing, and they're saying all the creatives are all in, okay, then let's do a little bit of what like the New 52 did with Batman. The great thing that made the New 52 Batman work for the majority of the 50 something issues that ran, I'd say at least 45 of them probably. It was Scott Snyder writing and Greg Capullo on art. And that is why that was a book that worked, is that every month you kind of knew what that looked like.
And that was a
Compared to
good
like,
team. That was
yeah,
a decent team.
compared to DC Comics or Detective Comics, which ran at the same time, Detective Comics had a creative team on, I think, for the first 6 issues. And then they had one on for the first next 12 after that. And then another 6 after that. And then another 12 after that. And then someone took over for like 20 issues. By the time you got to 50, it's like we've had 6 different cooks in this kitchen. What I am hoping they've done is like, look, for if we're going to do all in on this, I'm hoping it's like a 5 year plan. I'm hoping it's, hey, this is the writer of Action Comics, and our goal is that he will be the writer of Action Comics in like 2030 or something like that, right? I'm hoping that's the long term plan.
At
If this
least for
is
a
just going
year.
to be another, we'll get somebody for 12 issues to write the book and then reboot and relaunch, then we're going to be right back where we are today.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna put all of them on my sub list.
Oh, I mean, the ones I'll say. I mean, I'm absolutely going to try
Now,
the
what books am
Batman
I gonna
Superman one.
cancel? What books am I gonna?
Yeah, I'll have to go through, and I don't know that my budget can really
Hmm.
afford a few more.
Who's on the
Uh,
chopping block?
the new X-Men books that we said we were going to start might not make it very long, but I
We'll
think that's
see.
the
I've only
thing
had
is,
issue one of X-Men, so we'll see if it.
yeah, I just think that's going to be the thing. I will say too, the only other thing that I get it, it's a reinvention. I will say the first looks of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman were not the most impressive for me of this absolute universe.
I
In
just
that
caught a glimpse of the Batman. He was more of a
Batman
shadow.
looks more like the Juggernaut and has a huge bat symbol. And I mean, maybe they're going for a Dark Knight Returns vibe on it. We'll see.
Frank
Again,
Miller,
I think,
respect.
Scott Snyder on it. I'm going to give that a lot of grace. Superman, I would say, is not a great design, but again, maybe once it's in panel and there's a whole issue,
And a new
I think
Superwoman.
yeah, there's a new Superwoman coming to Action Comics, that kind of stuff. So we'll see. I think, there were some cool announcements with it. I would encourage folks to check it out, see what you think. Let us know what you guys are thinking. I do think what I will say on this to end this on a positive note, because we always want to try to be positive here. DC needed to do something. DC has been kind of spinning the wheels for a while. They needed something. Hopefully, this will be an infusion of life to it. I think announcing it right before Comic-Con is a really smart idea. I'd assume we'll see a
Ah,
lot of
don't
news
you wish you were
breaks and things
going?
next week to get some momentum. I think building up 3 or 4 months of anticipation for it, announcing it now, and then we get it in October is good. And I will say, Snyder and Williamson being the guys that seem to be spearheading the whole thing at least gets me temporarily to go, you know what, I have some faith in it. Will it probably crash and burn? Who knows? But I will say for DC needed to do something. Hopefully this will work. Let us know what you guys think below. Did you guys see this announcement? Are you going to be all in for this? Are you excited to see what they will do? What were your thoughts on the initial designs of these characters in these books? We always like to see what you guys are thinking down below. As always, folks, thank you so much for watching. We hope you have a great day and God bless you.
Thanks, everybody. I'm all in.